I have this theory about people, and this I think aligns very well with it, which is there's high volatility and low volatility people. And I've talked a bunch of times on the show about as an investor, when you're investing in founders, you want high volatility people. Either they're going to build a multi-billion-dollar company, or it's going to be a big hole in the ground, but you want it to go big, right? Guys like Adam Neumann, people are like, why does he keep getting money? Well, it's because he's going big. You just don't know which direction, right? But like, it's going to be big. And so that's in investing. But in the regular world, outside of investing, there's high volatility and low volatility people. Yes, the drug, there's a chemical component to it where they get addicted to it and they become obsessive and all of this. But if they replace it with something else that then becomes an obsession, whether it's a drug or not, that's a high volatility person. They can swing drastically and then go like 100 miles an hour towards that thing. And it's almost like the person themselves, if they're pointing in the right direction, it's a positive. Pointing in the wrong direction, it could be catastrophic.
And then the two things come to mind when you say that, right? So first, I never described it as high volatility and low volatility. The phrasing I always use, but it's not in the context of an addictive personality, just kind of how you grew up and what you experienced as a youngster. I call it a ceiling, the ceiling on the floor concept, right? When you grow up in a safe environment, when you grow up nurtured without really wanting for anything. I'm not saying you're spoiled, just not destitute. Your mentality is to maintain that and to kind of meet the expectations of the status quo you grew up in. So your floor is higher. You're not. It's really hard for you to fall off. You got a support system around you. You more or less understand how to work and do things and be a constructive, productive, contributing member to whatever group you're part of. Your floor is higher. Mm-hmm. But your ceiling is lower. You're not going to take risks. You're not going to fly off and do something crazy because those moves are highly volatile. To start a business, right? You could succeed and be great. You could also fail and end up going on the welfare line. And if you've never been in that position, that is like devastating. We don't deal well with loss at all. So you're like, I'm going to avoid the loss, but in avoiding the loss, you avoid the gain, the potential gain as well, right? And then the other thing I thought about when you were saying that is, I know some people who did hard drugs and didn't get hooked. I know a guy that smoked crack like 2 or 3 times, and he was like, it's just not for me. Now, no one would look at that end of one experiment and go, told you it was a scam. Crack's not addictive. Like no one will react that way. But what that tells me, there are a lot of different ways to interpret that based on what we know now, and how your environment and who you are shapes whether you're going to get addicted to certain things or not. But one of the other interpretations is like, what if there are people who, for whatever reason, they don't take to things like that. Drugs just happen to be an easy example to look at and measure because we can measure the negative output, or not negative output, negative outcomes. Okay, well, you're in prison. We can ask you where you're in drugs. You committed a crime. We can see the drugs behind it. You get into the system in one way or the other, and we can see the effect of drugs. But what we don't see are the people who have that same trait, never pick up something negative, but never excel in something positive either. Mm-hmm. They're the people who it's like the balanced lifestyle folks, right? Mm-hmm. There's that whole thing like, you want a little balance, and balance is cool and balance is great and there's a lot of benefit to it. But one of the things you don't get typically when you have balance is you don't get exceptionality. You get, there are 2 ways to have a B average, right? Which is to be B's in all subjects, or to have like 2 A's and a bunch of D's, and it's still not going to quite work out, but you tend to not be exceptional in any 1 or 2 areas that it's going to gain you recognition or a disproportionately or asymmetrically higher income than if you do the right balance thing and you don't, I don't like saying right, if you take the balanced, safe approach to life.
One of the beliefs I think that's changed a little bit in business, it used to be go find the well-rounded person. Go find the person who went to a certain school, got the degrees, got, this skill set. They were in this club. They did this extracurricular activity. They worked at this job for 5 years, whatever. Now I see a lot more people talking about hire for the exceptional skill. So exactly what you're talking about. Don't hire the B student across the board. Hire for the person who is amazing at sales and they're horrible at finance, right? Because guess what? When they join the team, they are not going to be running the finance team.
Right.
They're going to be running the sales team. And you need someone who's excellent at sales and so go hire for that. Most people are actually aspiring to be the well-rounded person. And it always cracks me up. Like I'll talk to a friend. I'll be like, what have you been doing? And they'll tell me some like crazy hobby they picked up or something. Why are you doing that? Like basically because I think I should. I'm like, do you enjoy doing it? They're like, no, it's hard. It sucks. I'm like, so are you doing it because it's hard and it sucks? Like, okay, I see that path of thinking. But usually is no, because I think that I should be doing this and it provides some social signal or I want to fit into a certain group or whatever. And I'm just like, man, what a life that would suck to like live just doing shit because you think other people expect you to do it.
You're describing a lot of people, and probably even more than I tend to cluster, because to me, I see it as a normal distribution. I see a lot of traits. And even if that's not like exact, and it almost certainly isn't, it's useful. And we can make some useful predictions. If I tell you that, the average person is balanced and most people fall within two standard deviations of that on either side, they're either going to be kind of good at many things and are kind of bad at many things. That leaves this rare individual that gets it. And whether they get it intentionally or accidentally stumbled into it and had some good experiences and some payback and kept with it doesn't matter. But they get it. The rewards are they're so disproportionately higher. They don't scale linearly. I wouldn't even say truly exponentially. If you are really good, that's like boxing, for example. If you're a good enough boxer to get into the top 10, you're gonna make a lot more money than a club fighter, but not nearly as much money as the guy who is fighting for the title. Mm-hmm. By definition, 1 or 2. But to get to 1 or 2, you got to give up a lot. Mm-hmm. Even to get in the top 10, you got to give up a lot. I wrote an article about this when I was, people always ask me why did I stop with the record I had, and it's a complicated answer, or at least multifaceted answer, which is why I wrote the essay. But one of the things I touched on was that for me to get to the top 10 with my ability, where I started, my size, that's a huge opportunity cost. Is it worth it? You look at the fighters, I would choose fighters because that's the example, but I think it scales in any competitive domain or domain where there is I guess zero sum is probably a better way to look at it. And the people who make it to the top are so much further ahead of everyone else in the middle. But to get there, you have to be obsessed. Like anyone you see playing professional sports on TV, those aren't well-rounded individuals. It's actually kind of a joke here in America that we make these guys go to college first, at least in the NFL. The NFL, I think, is the only sport where there's not a direct from high school to pro pipeline. I know there's one in basketball, I know there's one in baseball, and I'm pretty sure there's one in hockey, but not in the NFL. But it's a joke that we're like, you got to go through the NCAA and go to college, because who are we kidding here? You're not making these guys. Very rarely where you get the guy that's like
Myron Rolle. Remember him?
Yeah, right.
Myron Rolle was like a Rhodes Scholar. He was in like pre-med, and he was also a star on the football field.
I'm trying to remember the guy's name. He played for the Ravens. Johnny. I follow him on Twitter. I think we follow each other, but he's got his degree in math. Mm-hmm. I remember Courtney Brown, who played for the Browns. He was an engineering. He had an engineering major at Penn State. But these guys are like rare. I mean, like we
can name them because they're so rare.
I don't even follow. Right, exactly. We don't even follow football that much. At least I don't. I follow well enough to know that like when someone outstanding like that shows up, because that's not normal. What is normal is being so obsessed that you get to that level and you don't do anything else.
Hey, you. Did you like this video? Great. Make sure you subscribe, like the video, and see you next time.